Good afternoon. I'm District 1 Commissioner Linda Lewandowski. I wanted to share a briefing which may be of interest to you. During our Lewis Chapel Community Planning meeting this past January, our residents identified alternative solid waste solutions as a high priority topic to be explored. A good portion of our property tax dollars in Sequatchie County are spent on hauling waste from our county dumps to be disposed of in nearby landfills. As our population grows, so does the volume of waste and the costs associated with its hauling and dumping in the landfills. This situation seems unsustainable over time from a physical landfill capacity, environmental, and financial, i.e. increasing tax dollar spending perspective. Recently, I was contacted by a representative of Carbon Black Global, LLC, Mike Menikoff, who is operating a biomass and MSW processing plant on Fredonia. He spoke briefly about their plant's capabilities on Fredonia and offered a tour of the facility. I accepted this invitation and we arranged to meet at the facility on Tuesday, May 12th. The day before the planned visit, I received a call from Mr. Menikoff, who advised me that there was a meeting at the courthouse arranged by Commissioner Wayne Clemens, who's a sanitation committee member, regarding a potential waste-to-energy plant for a data center which he said had been discussed with the county. He also mentioned that a Bitcoin mining company was interested in partnering with the county to invest in a new, larger processing plant. I asked him to send me the briefing materials so that I could review it before the meeting. I contacted Chester Shell to see if he knew about the meeting or the proposed plant and data center. He did not. Upon arrival at the courthouse on May 12th, I met Mr. Menikoff, who was setting up a Zoom session with Landera, who is Carbon Black Global affiliate, their CFO and Vice President of International Business Development. Others present in the courthouse for the meeting were Commissioners Chester Shell, Paul Powell, and Wayne Clemens, all of whom are sanitation committee members, with Mr. Powell as the chair. Also present were Mr. Mark Kirkpatrick, who identified himself as a consultant to Mr. Clemens, and our video recorder. I asked Mr. Powell if there had been a public notice posted for the meeting, and he said there was no such notice. When the meeting began, I announced that there were 4 commissioners present, and since the public was not given notice of the meeting, that we would be unable to discuss or decide on any matter of public business. Chester and I wanted to provide the public with this information since it appears that there have been prior meetings between public officials, Carbon Black Global, Landera, and a consultant without any official public notice, in order to be transparent with our community residents. What follows is a video of the meeting. Thank you.
You know me, I'm Mike. This is
Mark Kirkpatrick.
Mark Kirkpatrick. This is Wayne Clemens. Paul Powell.
Linda Lewandowski.
You're just
Paul
Okay.
coming.
And Chester will be here shortly. Close that door.
Chester. Yes, sir. All right. Vince is. We got it set up. Okay, Vince.
I think
Good morning, everybody. So I'm Vince Harkins. I'm the CFO of Carbon Black Global, and John Georgopoulos is also on the line with us.
Hey, Vince, wait a second.
I think we need to state up front, you got 4 commissioners sitting here, 4 elected officials, that this has not been advertised as a public meeting. There's been no public notice.
Right.
So we need to make that clear, so we will not be able to deliberate, make any decisions, or do anything
This
else.
is just a
Right.
fact-finding
Yeah.
mission.
Yeah,
I just think
completely,
everybody needs to
completely
understand that from the
understand.
beginning.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
And so I'm saying John Georgopoulos is on the call with us as well. John takes care of marketing and promotion of our products globally and been involved with Carbon Black Global for many, many years. I'm going to go through a presentation. Some of you may have already seen this. As I'm doing that, if you have any questions, please feel free to just ask your questions, and then at the end of this, we can kind of go through a scenario of where we are and what things look like going forward. So Carbon Black Global, it was set up initially to do processing of wood waste and making activated carbon. Through the years of testing and doing a lot of improvements to our system and everything, we started working with municipal solid waste and a number of other components, and set ourselves up to be a company that can take waste products and turn it into energy. And been working on improving that since. So the company started in 2009. Mike and several other people are involved with that. I didn't join the company until 2014. Lots of different things were improved and developed through those years, including getting patents in place. And in 2018, 2019, we got another investor involved with the company, which took us to another level. We purchased the property there in Dunlap on Fredonia Mountain in 2015, and took the existing building and what was there and turned it into the R&D center that we have today. When we started working with municipal solid waste, we started a second company called Landera, which was licensed to basically promote and sell systems that process municipal solid waste. And through today, we're continuing to market that system around the world. Right now, of course, with you guys in Tennessee, we're kind of going back to discussions we've had probably for at least since I've been involved with the company since 2014, where we've said, at some point, landfills are going to fill up, and we have a solution to putting waste in the ground by going through our system. Hopefully all of you have seen the 10 acres that we have on Fredonia. Footprint is very similar today. The only thing that's changed since we first bought the property is a lot less trees across the street. We still have a lot of trees surrounding our property. We've used a environmental scientists, several of them actually through the years. One was with us since 2016 that helped us develop a lot of the technologies around having very few emissions coming from our system and doing things that help that, whether it's the scrubbers, the filtration, the time that you process. And then we hired another PE, environmental scientist, Charles Cook, who looked at our system and independently gave us some ideas and basically confirmed a lot of what we had been saying and what TDEC had said about our system. We asked him, so what would it take to get a permit if we put a plant in Tennessee? And he basically said, you would end up having to go through a new process and you'd have a different permit than what you have on Fredonia Mountain. But with all the work and testing that you've done since 2016, that process certainly would be less cumbersome than it would be if you hadn't done all that. So he was fairly impressed with what we could do, and hopefully will be involved with us if we do build a plant in Tennessee. He would be involved with helping us and the county get the permits that would be required, to run the plant.
Vince, can I interrupt right shortly? A little bit. One of the things we were dealing with TDAC, I've over the years I've been dealing with them. They said, about what he said about the permit, but it will be much easier because they are familiar with our system and going through the process.
It's not like starting at ground zero. You've
Yeah.
already got data to support everything that you're trying to.
Well, what's the difference between now and permit process we had to start with? You got anything changed different from what you had?
Well, I mean, was there changes? Yes, there was changes. But we have them down now. TDAC is familiar with them, so this is what you're going to have to do. And let me bring something up. Up in Fredonia, we can only do 30% on waste. That's how that permit was written, because when we started, we were doing wood waste. And so, well, what if we did garbage and tires? Well, you can get a permit with just 30%. You can't go over 30%. So if there is a permit down in wherever, Sequatchie, wherever, it will be 100%. You can do anything.
So 30% of what?
of waste, of MSW, trash. We can only go up to 30%.
What's the volume now? What's the max volume that you can accommodate?
Up there? I mean, that's a,
If,
go ahead, Vince.
I was just saying, on Fredonia, we have 2 processors, so we control our process volumes. We only process 5 days of the week at the most, sometimes 4. We don't always run both. If you're looking at a full scaled up plant, we would size it and scale it based on how much waste you have. And we've been talking about a 300 ton per day processing plant would be an ideal scenario, particularly in this case with the Bitcoin client. So we would then size the number of autoclaves and all the downstream based on that.
Okay, but my question was, what is the volume with the 2 autoclaves that you have now?
That's kind of a trick question because, I mean, sometimes we process, sometimes we don't. I just cannot go over 30% by weight for my total weight. Be it if I do 10,000 pounds, or if I do 20,000 pounds, if I do 30,000 pounds. I would have to go look at our logs, because that's one of the things in our permit we have to log. All our MSW tires and wood waste, and we've got like a 12-page log that does all the VOCs, the weight,
So do you have an estimate for how long it would take to go through like an environmental assessment or EIS process?
You mean for a new plant?
Yes.
It would be based on TDEX speed, quite frankly. There's a format that you have to follow, and you go through a formal application, and then there's a review. I would guess, because of the groundwork that we've done for the last, since 2016 through today, probably safe to say 6 months, maybe a little less.
well, I mean, one thing, we start, or whoever starts to build this plant, they're going to go to TDAC and get a construction permit. And, that takes it down the line. We ran on a construction permit for what, 5 years?
Yeah, at least, maybe a little more.
Just working out all the kinks and all the bugs, upgrading. Then after we got all that taken care of, we went and did a final air test and sent it into TDAC, and they had, how many BTUs does your flare put out, and there was one other question. We sent that in, and we got our final permit. That's good to 2031, I do believe. 2030. Then we're going to have to go get another air test and get it re-permitted.
And part of the process involves using third-party companies that do this, checking your emissions, and we've done that at our Dunlap facility a couple of times now. But you get the plant operational, and based on the metrics and the scrubbers and downstream filters that you have, you would get into production, and then it has to be monitored and checked, and you then ultimately, based on the emissions coming out and the tweaks that you'd have to do, you'd end up with a final permit.
Well, one question. What scenario if something went bad? What grounds have we got to protect the taxpayers from any liability or whatever? I mean, to safeguard the county. Say, for example, something happened that just
Pollution, what you're trying to
or
say.
anything happens. Say, for example, it folded or anything. I mean, I'm just looking at the worst scenario. What grounds will we have to protect the county and the taxpayer?
Well, I mean, the Bitcoin miners, the crypto miners, would have to have liability insurance.
Oh,
I mean, I haven't even thought about that. That is a real good question. I'd have to talk to our attorney about that.
Right.
I mean, I'm not an attorney. I can't tell you, well, I can give you an educated guess, but I wouldn't take that to the bank. Linda, you had a question about the environmental assessment. I mean, on our part or the property part? Because I mean,
Or you're
there's,
gonna build a plant, so you're gonna have to go through a process and get it cleared for environmental. So they're gonna, normally it's depending on if they do an EA or a full-blown EIS, it's like a 2-year process.
yeah. Once again, good question. I'd have to, I mean, that would probably come through TDAC. And I'd have to contact my sources at TDAC for that. If they require it, I mean, is the county gonna require it?
It's not so much the county, it's gonna be the feds,
Yeah,
and then how Tennessee handles it. Yeah.
Okay, now,
Okay.
would it be like, okay, like I said, this is Johnny, we're just a fact finding. If we decide to move forward and bring the entire committee in and all that, would it behoove us to bring the TDAC official in on that meeting to answer any questions that obviously you're not able to answer because it's a TDAC question?
Well, I mean, when we get out of here, I'll go
planning
call my
motion.
contacts
Plan.
in TDAC about
That's what I'm
what they require, on that. Because I mean, the property up there went through an environmental assessment when we built it in 2009.
Right, we're talking completely different
Yeah,
land
apples
than
and
everything
oranges.
else.
Yeah, you're going from micro to a
Right.
monster.
What's that?
You're going from a micro to a monster when you expand what you've already got. And you gotta go through that whole process again.
All right, let's go further with what we got here, so.
All right, go ahead, Vince.
Okay. So again, the scenario is similar from what we understand in Sequatchie County and the surrounding counties. The same problem exists in many states in the U.S. with all of the landfills starting to fill up and expenses going up, tipping fees going up, environmental requirements going up. Our system, again, that we're proposing reduces the amount of waste by up to 90% in volume. So for every 100 tons that's going, being processed, all but 10, the only thing that would ultimately go to a landfill potentially or be recycled is roughly 10% of that. So 10 tons of the 100 tons. So, that in itself obviously extends the life of the landfill. What we end up putting into a landfill is basically carbon and inert material. So it's not going to produce any emissions. It basically eliminates the problem of landfills filling up. And then the other benefit, of course, is by using the waste and processing, converting it into electricity, you've got another revenue stream, not only from tipping fees, but selling the electricity. And in the scenario we're talking about today with the Bitcoin operators, they of course want that electricity. And in their minds, they're not only taking care of their needs for power, but they're also helping the environment by taking waste that was going into a landfill and keeping it out of the landfill and converting it into a renewable energy source. The factors to consider for anybody are tipping fees are continuing to go up, transportation costs are going up. If you have to truck waste to another location, obviously that's going to become more expensive. Wear and tear on the vehicles that you're using for that. I mean, there's a number of scenarios that we try to factor in when you look at the affordability and the return on the investment of a plant. This is some data that we got from TVAC from a couple of years ago that kind of shows where trash was going at that point, MSW flow, going right through Sequatchie County in many cases, and then of course the surrounding counties, primarily heading to either Ray. This is also showing quite a bit going to McMinn, and then a lot of it going to Marion County, which I've seen all of those landfills. Not sure of the status of McMinn anymore, but my understanding is Ray County is filling up, and same with Marion. But Sequatchie is positioned in an interesting location to help all the surrounding counties. And I mean, just, again, from a transportation standpoint and logistics, it's a logical place to consider. Again, with our system, you don't have to pre-process, you don't have to shred. The only sorting you would do necessarily is remove large items, and the rest of it is basically put into a canister and is processed. And then, what comes out afterwards is easily separated and ultimately could go to a landfill or perhaps some other use. Mike mentioned tires. We can process tires in our system. Again, the revenue for tires is going to be over and above what you would get from tipping fees on MSW, so it potentially is a revenue stream and a way to get rid of tires that aren't being repurposed by some other source. A couple things that differentiate us from other technologies such as incineration or plasma technology, a number of different things out there. Our emissions, quite frankly, are cleaner than what you get from an incinerator. That's just a fact based on the data we've done on Dunlap. Our system is less expensive than incineration or plasma technology. We can produce renewable or clean energy. We obviously reduce the volume of waste. You don't have to pre-process, so your labor requirements are actually less than you would have in different scenarios. And with our design system, it's scalable. So if you built a plant today for 200 tons a day, let's say, or 300 tons a day, and it grows in 5 years and you need to add another capacity for another 100 tons, we can do that very easily. As long as you have the footprint land around it, you can add equipment and utilize some of what's existing and then add to whatever else is needed to accommodate your growth. Quick scenario, in a plant that you would build, your waste would come to the plant the same way that it goes to a landfill today, in whatever method that is, whether it's a public waste collecting system or the county's vehicles or whatever. It would go into our plant and basically dump it into a plant. It would be put into a baler so that it creates a contained cell, if you will, of waste. That cell is then put into a steel canister. This picture, you can see that it was just dumped in there, so you have the ability to just put it into a canister loose as well. But for a number of different reasons, we're looking at using the roto baler in there. That steel canister then goes into the autoclave, and it goes through the thermal conversion process. And again, what differentiates us from incineration is you don't have combustion in that autoclave. It's a thermal conversion process where you're thermally deconverting the materials down to carbon and ash. And this is what you end up with when you start with a container load of waste. You can see some aerosol cans, some pieces of glass, and a lot of carbon and ash. If you had a tire in there, you would see a steel ring along with what's in there. And this is what would ultimately go to one of the landfills. One of the environmental scientists that we used, that I mentioned earlier from 2016, Judy Krajzanowski, did a lot of analysis of the emissions coming from our system and compared it to what comes out of the landfill and what comes out of incineration. And again, scale-wise, we're down here at the very bottom, almost not even measurable with our emissions compared to what comes out of a landfill and what comes out of incineration. And this is looking at a 200 ton per day processing. And with landfilling, proven fact, if you read or Google anything, the emissions that come from a landfill are there for up to 20 years. So what makes our system more affordable, and how do you justify the cost of our system, is through a number of different revenue streams. The tipping fees, of course, are your big one, and I know that's something that's changing, and I guess is even in some cases unknown for the next year and even beyond. But you'd have a tipping fee that the plant would charge for what's coming into the plant. You'd also have a separate fee for any tires whatever steel comes out of your post-process waste can be sold along with other recyclables. Your power generation, TVA has a surplus of power, and that's always been a challenge for us, getting enough money from renewable energy to actually justify doing that expense. But in the scenario we're talking about with Bitcoin, you have a captive audience that will take all the electricity. And if there's anything left over afterwards, then TVA would buy it, having it go to the grid.
Now, can I ask a question on the electricity you're producing with what the plant that you're planning on setting up? Will that produce enough electricity to supply the Bitcoin and then some, or is there any chance of having to pull from the grid?
I mean, it would, based on the size, and we're using 300 tons per day, that would produce enough electricity to run the plant as well as give the Bitcoin operators what they need for a typical setup. They've got a scalable business too, and they can add containers to their processing plant if they had more electricity. But the general scenario, John, what's the megawatts that the client is looking for normally?
They're usually looking for 6 megawatts.
Right.
So that's why the 300-ton size is perfect for them. They'll go more, but really what they're looking for is that minimum of about 6 megawatts.
Yeah, thank you.
And the reason I ask is because that's one of the big concerns about the mining and the what are they called, Mark?
Data centers.
Data centers. I'm sorry, is pulling power from the grid, and so that's the reason I asked that, just to to put people's mind at ease if this does work out, that it's not going to affect everybody's utilities.
5 megawatts will handle about 800,000 cores. It's an amazing amount of compute power that you can do with just 5. So 6, you're good.
Okay.
It's how you distribute it.
I mean, that's
Just to add on that, they don't intend on pulling from the grid because that's not what they want to do. So generally speaking, even if we went with a 100-ton plant, their smallest unit, I think, uses about 1.5 megawatts. They would not put in 2 or 3 in that case. So they don't want to have the expense of pulling from the grid, and they're trying to stay away from pulling from the grid.
And that's the reason I was asking, because the data center stuff right now are getting a lot of bad press on electric and water, and so I'm just want to head that off now before we even go any further.
Yeah, well, we can provide data, that comes from them, from independent sources, that tells you how much water they use. And again, the reason they're interested in this plant is because they want all the electricity. They don't want to get it from the grid. That way they have a plant that they're either fully own or partially own, and they have a guaranteed stream of electricity. So that's not a problem for them. It's a fixed cost, if you will, for them. By getting everything all the electricity they need directly from this one plant. So it's a perfect scenario.
So are
the actual logistics of how all of that works with TVA, you probably would have a connection to the grid just as a backup and just to have that available. But the intent is no usage from the grid or from the public source.
So
and the scenario
are you envisioning?
We get about 2.5 megawatts for every 100 tons of MSW.
Hey, Vince, excuse me. Go ahead, Linda.
Yeah, so are you envisioning these two plants being co-located?
Yes. So our plant, so the processing plant will be on the same piece of land as the mining operation. They'd all be together.
So in your presentation, there was an acreage requirement. Is that for both plants, or is that just for processing?
Both plants.
Okay, and then also, is there some way to, your process generates a tremendous amount of heat. Is there a way to, how are you envisioning, are you looking at combined heat and power, or what comes out the other end that can be usable?
Well, everything that's coming out of the other end, whether it's going into a organic Rankine cycle generator or steam generator, whatever ultimate power source we use, it would all be used, and anything that's left over would be recycled and used again. So you really wouldn't have any, combined heat and energy, additional source of heat that would be usable for anything else other than perhaps heating the plants.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So you would use the output, which is a lot of heat. I mean, is the input into the, well, it would be the energy generation source, whatever you're using there. Would you be using combined heat and power?
Yes.
I mean, that's the energy that's coming out, right, out of the process,
Yes, the process is creating heat,
right?
and that heat is what is used to make the electricity.
Yeah, on another note, we would have to hook up a switchgear with Sequatchie Valley Electric. To the surplus power would have to go back to them, because I mean, if we are getting power, have a hookup from them, well, we have to have a switchgear to send power back that we don't use, or we'd have to put in a battery system to store it.
And then the interconnection agreements, has that been factored into the timeline?
Yes.
Couple of the comments on the plant, again, I mentioned earlier, it's easily scalable. We have, designs that accommodate just about any size plant you need. It would be laid out so that you have a process flow that makes sense for utilizing the space as well as the most efficiency. The plants itself will be attractive. They'll be good-looking plants for whatever neighborhood you put them in. And, that they can again expand. And we're looking at, anywhere from probably 12 to 18 months from contract start to having a plant that's operational, just to kind of, give you a little bit of a timeline. And the longest lead time right now is getting the power generation equipment. And that's a moving target as we speak. Here's an example layout where you can see over to the right, your waste trucks would come in and you would dump your waste. It would then be baled and then it would go into the many autoclaves. Ultimately, with the post-process waste going into a containment area over on the left, and then you'd have your power generation and all other components laid out in this so that you're maximizing the footprint of your plant. And again, it would be designed specifically for the size that you need based on the amount of waste.
That diagram,
Yes.
just the waste disposal part. It's not including the area where.
Correct.
Right. Okay. I didn't think I saw it in there.
Yeah, correct.
So, previously we were looking at the county looking at grants or bonds or whatever to do this, and now that we're introducing another option with the Bitcoin client as a partner, there's a couple of scenarios, and you just mentioned the amount of land, so you've seen some of this, but, they're open to potentially, if the county, I'll just say, or you guys or the counties are able to come up with the feedstock, which is going to be, for round purpose, we're talking 300 tons per day from the surrounding counties, as long as that's guaranteed and they have that, for now on. And typically, in all cases around the U.S., the amount of waste doesn't seem to ever be going down, or not much. So I think once you have the sources of waste, if anything, that's probably going to grow. But as long as they have the feedstock and the plant is operational and they're getting the electricity, they're interested in investing even up to 100% of the cost of the plant. Working out the details of who manages it, getting the waste to the plant and everything else. So there's obviously a partnership that the county is going to play one way or the other. But that's something that's on the table. The county may say, no, we want to own part of it, and obviously that's still another option. But, for the models that we put together, and we're saying, let's just say we're a year out, best case scenario, I think you guys are probably looking at close to $80 a ton, particularly when you build into it transportation and collection costs, everything associated with getting it to today the landfill, and in the future to one of our plants. At $80 a ton, the model looks pretty good with the Bitcoin company getting all the electricity. There's still state and federal incentives that are out there, both for the county and for the client. The workforce that would be needed would all be set up and, be coordinated with the county and the state, and a lot of positive things that could come out of this thing. And, the whole scenario, quite frankly, of, and this is the negative press that Bitcoin mining operations have, if they were getting all their electricity from waste, like this plant is proposing, providing employment to people not only in the plant, but overseeing some of the Bitcoin mining itself. It's kind of a perfect scenario in many cases. This is just, again, food for thought on the next steps. We obviously have to sit down and execute some kind of a memorandum of understanding for all parties to understand who's going to do what, and work all that out, and then you get into the details of the engineering assumptions, working out
We don't have all
not
those
only with
slides that he's.
Sequatchie County Electric, but TDEC and TVA. This is all part of the next steps that are coming. Questions that came up, about the Bitcoin operation that we addressed. One of them was water, which I think Mike already addressed that. The amount of water that's used is a lot less than what publicly has been touted, I guess. We have said that the wastewater from our processing could probably be used in the coolers and in what the Bitcoin operator needs. So that may not even be any kind of a drain, but it would be minimal use of water. And then noise levels. John did some research, and this is a typical container of processing computers, if you will. And the amount of noise that is coming from these, and it's been tested many, many times, is actually comparable to, as the comparison here says, normal conversation or even a vacuum cleaner. So it's typically between 65 and 75 decibels, which is less than what your little iWatch would pick up if you're in a room. So certainly from a standpoint of water or noise, we don't see that that's going to be an issue. I don't know what land we would potentially be using, but the ones that we've looked at in the past aren't very close to any homes or businesses anyway. So, again, I think it won't be a problem if that question does come up.
I have two questions. All right, and you just brought one up, the land. What's the minimal amount of land that you would need to start with for both the Bitcoin and the processing plant?
Well, based on the 300 ton per day plant, we have said between 10 and 20 acres. Okay. So what's the minimum? I'd say right in the middle of that. Let's just say 15 acres.
Okay, and the 20 acres would give you room to expand if the need arises, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
That would give you some expansion room, and plus give you some green space around both plants, which is always a nice thing too.
Does that include a substation for electrical?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Second question, you was talking about workforce. And this may sound like a stupid question, but what kind of educational level are we looking at, and what kind of pay would we be looking at?
Well, at educational level, there would be different levels for our plant, for the processing plant, the waste processing plant. The folks that run the control room that would be involved in the electrical side would obviously have to have more education or training from a vocational standpoint than your typical labor force would need to have, i.e. the people that are in the plant running the forklifts and moving the waste around, running the balers, and loading the balers and moving those around. So you have two different levels of training and education. With the ability for an entry-level person who's helping with controlling and managing the initial waste, being able to move up the ladder to ultimately even perhaps running the controls. The electrical component is going to require more background on the electrical side, of course. Salary-wise, it's always been our intent that we would try to be a higher salary level than comparative normal level our labor force. exact specifics, to be honest, I haven't really worked that. I can tell you what I have in my models. Typically, it's between $18 and $20 an hour for a entry-level person.
Okay.
And at a 300-ton plant, we're estimating you're going to need 30 to 36 people.
And that's including not just the grunt labor, but the ones operating the controls.
Yeah, that would be a 24-hour operation, 3 different cycles, 3 different shifts, and that would include the person running the control room as well as the electrical person.
And will you be offering any kind of like on the job training? Like somebody comes in as entry level but wants to move up the ladder, will y'all be offering any kind of training for those individuals?
Well, CBG would be involved in certainly the initial training and getting people set up. You know, the down the road, how all that works. We'd have to work out who is actually running the plant, who's in charge with it. So let's say in the scenario where the county partners with the Bitcoin client, the county and the Bitcoin company is going to be the owner. After CBG has set it up and got it running, the major decisions, the administrative part from that point forward would be run, based on the client and yourselves, the counties, if you will. CBG is always involved in supporting and backing up and maintaining the software that runs the plant, equipment, that kind of thing. But as far as, long-term growth plans and development plans, again, that would be a county/client process, I would say. Good questions, by the way.
Yeah, who gets the carbon credits?
The owner, the county/Bitcoin operator would get those. That would all be part of the revenue stream.
Let me interrupt here. You cannot get carbon credits for doing waste, MSW. You can only get it through doing green waste. That's where the carbon credits. So I mean, I've talked quite a bit about with a group trying to get carbon credits for the MSW, and you can't. There's no carbon credits for that.
Like for your biomass, that would count.
Yes.
Now, when just say you come in, you build up the plant and all that. From the outside, it's going to not look like a trashy junkyard, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's going to be.
I mean, the one picture that I showed you, this one, if you can see that, the front of it is actually going to be fairly attractive, and you would have probably offices in the very front of the building, your parking for the public, general public, with all your access coming in one end or the other of the plant. So there'd be some separation of that, but we've always envisioned when you drive by, you see a very modern, attractive-looking building, and even gone as far as to have digital display that says this plant is producing 2.6 megawatts per hour right now. Have some live equipment that's hooked up to what's being generated, and you're pushing that. So yeah, we've always envisioned something that actually adds to the piece of land that our plant may be sitting on.
I've got another probably dumb question. We have a few tire stores here that have quite an accumulation of used tires that are stacked outside the building. Can an individual bring tires to this plant, or does it have to come through the county contract?
That would be your call, I think. I would think you could have individuals bringing it to a plant as well. You'd either have that's the short answer. I would think you could do it either way. I think encouraging the public to bring tires is a good thing, personally.
That's back to location.
Yeah, I think
The plan is designed to be safe for whoever's in there. I mean, you wouldn't necessarily once your general public coming into the area where the trucks are backing in and dumping waste, you'd have some limitations, but certainly the plan could be designed so that you have a reception area for people to bring their tires in.
So is the, the substation, is that part of the processing plant? I mean, who runs that part of the operation?
Well, I mean, that would be Sequatchie Valley Electric would set up
It's on site of the property.
what's that?
The way you described it, the switchgear and all that kind of stuff, that would be actually
That,
on the property.
okay, that would be collaborated between the owner and Sequatchie Valley Electric. They're gonna have to come in and bring transformers in and bring power in, and then going into that switchgear to go out.
Well, we just had a substation built up in our district, and that took 4 years. So I'm listening to these lead times, environmental, there's already long lead times for transformers, that kind of stuff. And then, I'm worried about that I don't hear a coherent timeline for all the moving parts of this. Just a comment. The other thing, if I'm not
I would just like to add on that, because the Bitcoin guys would be using the power, the immediate need for hooking up with the grid outside of the property line would not be a pressing matter.
How do you figure? Because, Tennessee just passed a law that if, that they had to bring their own power to operate a facility. This just happened a couple weeks ago for any kind of crypto, or I believe it was AI centers, period. So that law is going to apply to this operation, correct?
Right, that doesn't apply because, the switching gear is going to be our responsibility with the Bitcoin and whoever the partner is, but it's going to be on site, and that will be the responsibility of the owners of the plant.
Right.
If at any point there's talk about connecting it to the outside grid, then that would have to be negotiated, right? And then if it was connected to the outside grid, you would have to have the electrical authority, they would have to maintain their side, and we would have to maintain our connection side to the grid. But it's not necessary in this case because the Bitcoin guys would want to use as much as the power anyhow. So it really probably at the end of the day doesn't affect the putting a plant in place. That's what the benefit of having the Bitcoin guys in there. They don't need any outside power, and the plant doesn't need any outside power.
Okay, the other question about carbon credits. I thought if you're basically reducing the amount of methane, right, that you would normally produce in a landfill, like the waste energy section or waste energy portion. So why would that right there is grounds for, going after carbon
Like
credits.
I said, I spent about a month talking
Right.
with the carbon credit group, and no, Mike, we cannot do trash. It has to be biomass. Because you're taking the methane and everything out, processing and turning it into biochar or charcoal and putting it back into the ground.
But in this scenario that you're presenting, you're also creating energy, right? So and then the process is going to reduce greenhouse gases, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
So if you're going waste energy, there's other that I'm aware of waste energy that are collecting carbon credits in their process. But anyway, I don't know if you guys are ready to address that here today. But I
Well,
think that's
like I said, I talked to them about a month and a half ago, and they said no, you cannot do it. When you say waste energy, they're taking wood waste and turning it into energy. We can do that with wood waste, but then they take the charcoal, the biochar, and put it back in the land, and that's where you're getting those carbon credits.
The one scenario we did, you may recall, Mike, when we did the analysis, it was actually on a potential processing plant in the Dominican Republic, and we actually worked with the UN Council on Climate Change to get this projected program approved by them. It was a scenario of not only, and it did involve MSW in that case, not what they calculated was how many greenhouse gas emissions you were going to eliminate by processing it rather than burying it. And then the electrical component side of it was calculated, and there were some carbon credit available for that particular, plant. So, it is a little hard to sit here today and answer that question. I mean, I think there are some opportunities. I know the group Mike was working with was specifically on the biomass side, but I think there, if you do actually have a plant where you're able to accommodate or calculate, I should say, how much waste you're removing from putting in the ground and the greenhouse gases coming from that, there is a way to perhaps get some carbon credit. So I think once we get a little further than where we are today, and you actually have plans for a plant and volumes and everything, that certainly can be calculated through that development process.
I would like to add there too, Vince, that calculation they gave us back was 80% of the garbage going in.
True, right. It wasn't even the full amount. Yeah.
I just did a search here. In Tennessee, generating carbon credits from municipal solid waste generally involves capturing methane from landfills or converting waste into energy, often supported by state level initiatives. So, I mean, there could be, I haven't seen that.
I mean, it's important because it'd be part of the revenue stream potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. Our system definitely will reduce the amount of greenhouse gases going into the air, when you compare what we're doing to a landfill. And it is, there's data out there that tells you what's coming out. So, I mean, I think there are ways to do that. So, some of the metrics that we've been promoting is the volume going into a landfill is reduced by up to 90%, the greenhouse gases up to 95%, and, the cost. If the county were to buy this plant itself and own it and operate it, if you compare the cost of our plant to an incinerator somewhere in the county, you would be saving quite a bit of money. If you have a partner like a Bitcoin operator that's going to pay for the whole thing, obviously it's a different scenario and a little bit more positive on the county side.
So you talked about, you answered Wayne's question about employment. What about the crypto mining plant that's co-located?
As far as employees?
Workforce, yeah.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm not sure. John, do you have a feel for that?
No, I don't have the information from the Bitcoin guys on that side of it.
Go ahead.
Certainly,
Go ahead.
if there's interest on the county side to pursue this whole, proposed concept, the next couple of calls would involve them being part of it too, probably.
Hey, excuse me. Go ahead.
Yeah, just in experience, and I've been working with data centers for many years, most of the functions that they're going to be doing are essentially just watching the lights blink. You're going to end up with a security force to secure the facility, make sure nobody gets in. You're going to end up with, and that'll probably be, 10, 20 people, depends on how big they actually build. And then the experienced crew or the highly educated crew is probably going to be no more than 5 people.
Would they normally have an electrical person there because of obviously they're using a lot of electricity and there's potential of issues? Is that something required 24/7?
You probably would want one on staff, but they're not going to, a lot of that monitoring is going to be done remotely. The one thing I don't have information on is how many of these other facilities they have and how much of that type of thing and monitoring is done centrally, and then they just dispatch somebody locally to actually go take care of issues as they occur.
Yeah, they would certainly have all that, but yeah, thanks for adding that.
Anything else?
So when would we be able to get more information on the mining side to add to this?
Well, I mean, I think that's up to you guys. I mean, if you want us to, we can go to the next scenario of setting up another meeting with them specifically. We can take questions that you guys put together and, get it to them and relay the responses. I think there certainly it will be need to have, let's just say the three parties together at some point here, the client, the Bitcoin operator, you guys, and us, to figure out next steps. They basically said, does the county have interest? Are they able to provide the waste that we're going to need to run a plant? That's the biggie. Can you get me 300 tons a day? Obviously, you can't get that from Sequatchie, but with surrounding counties, are you guys able to coordinate doing that and bringing that to the table? I think if that's the case, they're going to be all in on figuring out how do we get this thing into the works and get started.
Which is going to take us talking to surrounding counties, and getting contracts with them, and who would actually set up or designate how much the tipping fee would be for the plant?
The owners.
Well, again, if it's a scenario where the Bitcoin operator owns it 100%, they would have to do that. But for them to do that, obviously it's going to have to be working with the counties.
Right.
They can't come in and say, we want $120 a ton, or they're not going to get much business. But so I think the answer is it would have to be a jointly developed number, enough to not cause the counties or the companies that are transporting the waste to go out of business, but yet enough to pay for a plant and to make this whole model bankable.
Well, what would happen now if we had all these counties to put 300 ton in a day, and then all of a sudden some of them pulled out and we fall short of that 300 ton a day? What would be the consequences on that deal?
That have to reduce production.
Yeah, that would be a problem. I mean, we'd have to figure out how that's going to all be set up, and there'd have to be, again, I think there'd have to be commitments from the counties involved to, and or the companies involved to have that amount of volume to keep the plant going.
It'd be like his scenario there. It would be unusual though, once they committed themselves to doing this, for them to pull out, because they're gonna have to go somewhere else, and by the time they pull out, it's gonna be higher to pull out than it would be to stay there.
Yeah, it's
We found out over the years when we had to move from one place to the other.
Yeah.
Now, is the facility set up, so okay, say you need 300 tons a day. If things go like they're supposed to and you start getting 400 tons a day, do you have the space enough to handle that extra tonnage while it's waiting to be processed?
You need to expand the plant.
well,
Yeah.
Yeah.
we don't have the plant yet, but I mean, you would, typically what we would do with the number of autoclaves, scaling up the number of autoclaves, is we do build in the ability to have overage, because you do have cycle times for different autoclaves and maintenance and all this stuff. So short answer is, if you went from 300 to 400, that could be a problem, I think. That happened overnight. That's something, again, we talked about scaling up. If it looks like you're going to get an extra 100 tons, hopefully that's not going to happen in 24 hours. You're going to have a bit of time to figure that out. And so our scenario has always been not to store waste in the plant. You take what you can process in 24 hours, and then you're ready for the next day. It just gives you a cleaner operation and less problems to worry about. But by bailing it, you do have the ability to store it a little bit, without causing more of a mess or odors or anything like that. But your example of going from 300 or 400, that would be difficult. That would, you'd have to figure out another source for that extra 100 tons, I think, for a period of time.
So that 300 tons per day that you're briefing, that's the size of the plant you're looking at. How much, I mean, there's obviously gonna be maintenance downtime. Whatever you gotta do to those autoclaves and a year cycle and the associated equipment, how much of that,
How many people
what is the maintenance downtime? How much of that processing time would be affected to where you wouldn't be able to take 300 tons per day?
It wouldn't be. We would size the number of autoclaves so that you could do the 300 tons a day, because you have to have maintenance. I mean, that's built into your scaling or sizing of the plant to accommodate that number. And then you have a maintenance schedule of how often you do that. So it would be, there'd be enough autoclaves in that plant to process that volume per day and yet still do all the maintenance that's needed.
Because you're not gonna shut down the whole plant.
No.
You know, just
Right.
So y'all have backups in place to cover everything in worst case scenarios, correct?
correct.
Yes,
Design.
based on a 300 ton per day plant, yes.
I know I've been to a meeting, several years ago, Cumberland County to the north of us here. They're working on a device, a plan to congregate the garbage in one spot, separate it, disperse it out of it, and it'll be like, you could take your household furniture, put it in a bin. You take tires, put it in a bin. You took your plastic, put it in a bin. And it makes it easier for them to separate, to designate which way it goes from there. And all, that would be one of the things children would have to do to separate the stuff out, what's going in. I know you don't throw it all in there at one time. And
Yes, we do.
you do throw it all in there?
So you throw tires,
Tires.
furniture and all that in the same bin?
Little story, we had a group from Canada come down and we were doing a demonstration and we did the process, we took it out, dumped it, and there's a dishwasher in there. And I had no idea it was in there. The neighbor come by and was throwing some garbage away and he went and threw a
I know
dishwasher.
that was their plan, to get it separated out.
Yeah.
So
But, well, I mean, what would happen after we processed it? We would go and separate it. You know, you get, tires, get the metal out, get the glass.
You'd have to, or you couldn't bury it.
but y'all can take.
There's a big front end cost to separating it out that way though.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
very much so. I mean, we would, right now, we use an excavator with the thumb, I'll give Keith a call and he'll send me up a dumpster, dump it in the feedstock room and we'll load cans.
What kind of dollar figure are we looking at here for the entire process?
I'm sorry, what was that?
What kind of dollar figure are we looking at, the entire process of building a bigger plant than what you've got now? And how far down the road does you looking to process?
So we're using 12 to 18 months as an ideal scenario to be able to design and build a plant and then hopefully have it functional. As was mentioned earlier, there are crazy lead times on a number of different components. Autoclaves don't appear to be one of them. That's always been one of our our largest assets. The biggest part of it is going to be the electrical side.
Yeah.
And there are crazy lead times on that. worst case scenario would be you start processing waste and getting rid of it, and your power generation is delayed a little bit. But, again, the Bitcoin operator is probably more aware of the delays than we are. There's different scenarios that you'd have to figure out once you actually start getting into contract discussions and, start getting the, everything, as you know, requires deposits to get any kind of lead time. So, it's down the road to be able to give you an exact answer on that.
And the financial part of it, though, the Bitcoin miners, that, if I'm interpreting this correctly, they're looking at absorbing a big chunk of the cost.
Yeah, that's what they have said.
Okay.
As long as they can get the guaranteed waste and they can get all the electricity, our understanding is that they're willing to, and the land, they're willing to build a plant and operate it.
So we're looking at the county standpoint to be the land.
Now, both the waste processing side and the Bitcoin production.
Okay.
That's not what this says. It says
But I believe that door is open though. If the county says, you want to be part owner as well,
Linda,
for whatever reason.
this was put out before.
That's always a
we need to
possible scenario.
Yeah.
I know, but what I'm saying is the information you got here is,
Out of date.
yeah, it's kind of out of date because that wasn't even figured in when the Bitcoin, that came in later.
So the big concern nowadays is, the only thing I know of that's more toxic than a data center is a nuclear power plant. Honestly, I mean, the PR on them is ridiculously bad, and most of it's due to a complete misunderstanding of what they require. One of the things you're going to have to do extremely well for this to be accepted among the community is a lot of good PR. Secondly, the other thing I'm concerned about on this facility is fire safety. If you have a fire in that facility, the volunteer fire departments in Sequatchie County are not trained or equipped to be able to handle probably the type of fires you're going to have. Part of that depends on whether you do battery backups. And if you use lithium or you use lead acid batteries, it's a completely different kind of fire. And I don't think we're anywhere near having enough equipment to be able to handle those. So those are and the other one is, I don't understand from what I've heard so far, what you're going to do to smooth out your power. Is the power going to be generated and then stored in batteries until you're using it inside the plant? Is it going to go straight into the actual incineration process, if you want to call it that? How does that work?
Well, excellent points on the fire issues and safety issues and capabilities in the surrounding counties. So the details of the power side of it, honestly, have to still be worked out. I kind of implied earlier, do you initially get set up on the grid so that whatever you're producing goes into the grid, but yet you have the Bitcoin operator has an agreement with that based on what's being produced by their plant, they're getting all that in essence for free. And then for whatever reason, if they need more, it's there, then they pay for it, kind of thing.
So there's not really an on-site battery storage or diesel generator type of thing, correct?
I think there would be batteries on site.
Okay.
I think you would have that probably.
Why do you think Sequatchie County's ready for a data center? Anybody got an answer for you?
Say that again.
Why do y'all think that we're ready for a data center in Sequatchie County?
Well, if you're going to do the crypto, that's what it's going to be sitting in. The crypto mining requires a data center. And somebody is going to put that together pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And then start a campaign against data centers in general.
Yes.
Yeah, and if that's the case, then it's not a deal. What we did what CBG has tried to do is bring a solution to how to get a waste processing plant to Sequatchie County virtually for not a huge investment. And that is one way of doing it. You know, this discussion's, you know, happened before. We've had this before. That's the only reason we're even bringing that up. Does the county want Bitcoin operators or miners? You know, that I don't know.
Well, just to clarify, I'm on your side.
Okay.
I'm actually trying to design data centers for placement pretty much anywhere you want to put one. I've been doing this a long time. I understand them very well and know that most of the information that's put out to combat them is usually incorrect. So I'm looking at this as you don't want to lie to anybody. I'm not proposing that. This is a self-contained unit, or can be, because you generate your own power, your own water, and that's used to run the data center itself, which is your client in this case is a crypto merchant. It could be an AI, it could be anything you want. It's just compute power.
Yeah.
Can I ask another question? Is how long has Sequatchie County been aware that about a data center been mentioned in this county?
I have no idea.
It ain't.
Yeah, but I've never heard of it.
Oh, I hadn't either. That's why
Yeah.
that's new to me.
But you don't do crypto with, I mean, crypto's in a data center, sorry. It's a generic term.
So we're getting a little deep on some of this here.
But I mean, like you brought up the water usage. They use water, you know. Well, this system
It's enclosed. You're generating water when you
Basically, with
dispose
this,
of the trash.
you've got to get out to the public that there's going to be little to no impact on the public utilities whatsoever.
Trash goes in, crypto mining comes out. That's the way it
Well,
looks.
but you need a lot more detail on what we heard today. I think the next meeting needs to be public notice so they have the opportunity. But if you keep this, you know, away from the public after this point, you're gonna have a harder uphill climb.
and I agree with that. You know, this, I guess this was just a,
The only reason it was here is
Yeah,
even see if you
that's all it is.
No, I understand, but I'm just
thought.
saying, that's gonna be, you know, you reading the news every day. You know, you bring up the topic and it's like zoning around here.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want it. That's what you're gonna hear first thing. So there's a huge front end education piece and there has to be detail in here. The taxpayers also wanna hear how much of their tax money is potentially going into this,
project.
and then what the county gets out of it, what the taxpayers get out of it. So those are the really front end, you know, if you wanna focus on two things, that's it.
We'll say one of the biggest reasons we even entertaining this thought is because of the recent tax increase we had. What was one of the biggest ones was sanitation. And sanitation keeps going up, so we're trying to figure
I
out
understand
the
all
best
that.
way.
I'm just saying, if we get into any more detail, we're having a meeting too. I mean,
You know, from what I was reading, Tennessee has done a number of things, again, the state, to support or address Bitcoin mining as well as data centers. And I saw some of the legislature that's either in place or has been proposed. And I think I even read that there was a proposal for the state to invest X percent of their revenue in Bitcoins. So it seems to be a topic that's of interest and it is being looked at. But yeah, there's a lot of unfortunately bad publicity. And again, as I mentioned earlier, I think one of the things that the Bitcoin group that we're working with is trying to do is come up with a neat way to get their electricity like what we have. You know, where you're actually helping the environment, you're helping communities, and you're getting electricity virtually from waste rather than from any other source. So that would be part of the publicity that we want to share as well. But yeah, it's going to probably be an uphill battle. We had a similar scenario or problem with the folks up on Fredonia when we first started talking about, you know, testing MSW. And the whole community was in an uproar. We had a meeting up there, and after we had a chance to talk, it was okay. So I know there's a lot of work that has to be done by you guys as well as perhaps us to get this moving even further.
Well, at least you have, you know, a blueprint there with Fredonia that there was concerns, and y'all have proven that the concerns were negate, so y'all, so that would help a lot on the PR of this, if we decide to go this route.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you.
Any more questions,
Yeah,
comments?
can we get those updated slides? Because
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I will get all the email addresses, Vince, and send them to you, and you can send them over to the commissioners.
Sure, I will do that.
I mean, anyone
Be glad
else
to
we
do
need to
that.
send them to?
Lot to think about, and, we appreciate your time this morning,
People on
and,
the
No,
sanitation.
they're the ones gonna make the final decision on it, so
What?
they'll make the final decision if we go forward with it, so.
Yeah, but I mean, any more people on the sanitation committee that I need to get these
I think
two?
Michael,
But the county can shop it around. I mean, this isn't an official meeting,
Yeah.
right?
And get Michael Hudson a copy.
because I gave him
Well,
copies
I
of this.
want to make sure you
I
have
think
it.
you're gonna get it around to everybody else, right, that needs to get it? Okay.
Well, I mean, I have your email. Can we just send it to you? And do you have everybody else's email?
I'll give him
Or Wayne.
I got Wayne's too. I got Wayne. I'll just send it to you.
Ours will shim the bullet. Thank you,
Anything?
sir.
Thank you.
All right, thanks,
you're welcome,
Vince.
thanks.
Appreciate your time.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
I ain't gonna ask what they little fuzzy things are.
They're microphones, so,
Mouses,
Now,
different kind of mouse.
yeah, they're pretty good.
Therapies for midget.
Keeps out the interference, feedback, and everything else.
I've never